Well, hello everyone. I think it is 12:30, so we are bang on time. So we'll kick off. My name is Albert Keeshan. I'm a director of the HR department, Thames Valley and East Chilterns. We provide outsourced HR support to small and medium-sized organisations. We operate very much on a geographical basis within a network with a network of other HR consultants. And I'm very pleased to be joined by Chris Morrell, Operations Director of ProDrive IT, to talk about their implementation of a 4-day working week. Without kind of further ado, let's kick off. And so, Chris, just do tell me to kick off just a little bit more about ProDrive, how you set up, and what services do you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're an MSP, which effectively means we're an outsourced IT department for our clients. So we offer support services and design and implementation services. So we are the people that you phone up when there's a problem with the IT. We run a help desk. We have about 10 people on the help desk, and that runs from 7:30 to 6 o'clock every working day. So we have to be available to pick up the call and to answer the phone and make sure that we can work on our clients' tickets.
Fantastic. Before we get into the meat of the 4-day working week, just to let everyone know out there, we will take questions. If you can stick those questions in the chat, and we'll cover them at the end. So, Chris, why was there a desire to start a 4-day working week here?
Well, there's been I'm sure everybody's seen, there's been an awful lot in the media talk about 4-day working week, the benefits that it brings. It's the work that we do, particularly on the help desk, can be quite stressful. While there can be a lot of satisfaction in fixing problems and getting people back up and running again, you're only talking to people that have problems. So you can get some people that are frustrated, or just constantly sort of dealing with people's issues can be a bit can bring people down a bit. So we work very hard to provide a nice environment for our staff to fully support them. And we saw this as a real good opportunity to help improve the work-life balance of our staff. If you believe the reports, then also the benefits are that you'll get a more motivated and engaged staff. So the service that you deliver to the client will be much better. So those were the kind of things that we were attracted to it. Personally, I've worked abroad quite a few times. I've worked in Turkey, and where I was in Turkey, they worked a 6-day working week. And I've worked in America, where they are obviously famous for their long working hours, their long office hours. I didn't see that they were particularly more productive than we were in the UK with a standard 5-day working week. So I never had this kind of association between the length of hours you worked and how productive you were. Yeah. So I was very open to it, as were the other people in the leadership team. So when we discussed it, we saw it as something that was worth looking at and worth investigating.
That's fantastic. So tell us why a 4-day working week would work now, particularly in our current economic environment.
Yeah, okay. Obviously, again, referring back to the reports that there are lots of, it helps to work-life balance, it helps reduce stress, helps avoid burnout. I'm seeing an awful lot of people talking about burnout, and I think since the pandemic, everybody is just much more aware of mental health issues, and trying to make sure that your staff are supported through that as much as possible. So I think that's really important, and for your staff to see that you're supporting them and you are aware of these kind of things. In the present financial environment, costs are going up all the time. And there was a report on the BBC website that not working 1 day a week could save, I think it was £280 a month on childcare. So obviously that's going to make a big difference to people.
That is a huge saving. That's brilliant. Thank you, Chris. And what research did you do when you were considering implementing these flexible hours for ProDrive?
So on top of the kind of initial research, which I mentioned about being interested in it and the reports and all that kind of thing, we were aware, we wanted to be conscious of the impact it might have on our company and the service that we delivered. So the way that we started it was to look at all of the calls and tickets that come into our help desk, and we found that almost nothing happens on a Friday afternoon. That won't be a surprise to anybody that's worked in an office, but I looked at all the tickets created, calls come in, and I think it was 3% of those happened on a Friday afternoon. 14% happened on a Tuesday morning,
Right.
which was the busiest time of the week. I always thought it would be a Monday morning. But
Absolutely.
yeah, it's Tuesdays apparently. So it was then quite easy to pick that particular time that it wouldn't have too much of an impact because not a lot was happening there. We run ProDrive by numbers, and we're always very careful of being able to see the impact any changes have made the changes have made. So we came up with 3 key metrics that we were going to use to measure the initiative. They were customer satisfaction, employee engagement, and employee productivity. So we started a trial, and the first trial was for 3 months. We split the departments in the company into 2. One team A had a Friday afternoon, team B had the next Friday afternoon off, and then we made sure that we measured the impact that it had on it.
That's brilliant. So I guess the key question really is, what did your clients think about this change when you trialled it?
Well, we were very open with them about what we were going to do. So we sent out newsletters, we put some blogs on LinkedIn about it, and we even appended it to our email signature so that they were aware that it was happening, and we weren't trying to hide anything from them. Mm-hmm. We didn't, fortunately, I think we've got some great clients. We didn't have anybody come up to us with any concerns about it or say, well, you're doing this is ridiculous. So that was nice. That was the initial bit of feedback that we had. I mentioned the key metrics that we had. For me, one of the kind of marks that this would have been a failure or a negative impact was if any clients had commented on it at all. Yeah. So if I'd heard anybody saying we can never get in touch with you on a Friday afternoon or anything like that at all, that would have been a real bad mark for me. So we didn't have any of that, which was brilliant. Our customer satisfaction has increased since we did this, since we started the trial. So hopefully the clients are actually seeing a better service, and so their feedback would only be positive.
That's a really powerful stat, and that's fantastic. Thank you. So what about the benefits of this flexible working to both staff and clients so far? Just talk us through in a bit more detail.
Well, there's lots of them, I think. I mean, for the staff themselves, I think they who wouldn't want an extra day off and be paid the same amount, that no one's going to turn that down. We're seeing, as I said, we're seeing higher employee engagement. We have an online system that sends out polls every week or every fortnight staff, and those have all increased. We're seeing higher customer satisfaction. So the staff seem happier, the clients are getting a better service. Anecdotally, I always used to ask people what they were going to do during their time off, and for me personally, that was a really lovely thing to hear. People were able to spend more time with their family, picking their kids up from school or taking them to the park or whatever, or just doing the things, the life admin that you often struggle to find the time to get to do. There's also, I think, a big thing about recruitment and retention. So we actually had somebody quite recently that was offered another role at a similar company, fairly local, who was offered a substantial pay rise, but decided not to go, to stay with us. One of the main reasons that he gave was the fact that we were doing this scheme, and that we're looking to increase the scheme as well. And it's something that we use in the recruitment process. Again, who wouldn't want to earn the same money and work less? So I think that's a really powerful thing. I know in the IT industry at the minute, and you must be seeing it across your clients, it's incredibly hard to recruit.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very competitive. Salaries are increasing all the time. So anything that you can do to improve your chances there or differentiate yourself in a positive way, I think is really good.
I think that's really interesting. I think it's amazing how you're using the kind of work-life balance to recruit, retain, and motivate your staff. So that's very much cutting edge. So what about the challenges? What challenges have you had implementing this change?
Not too many. Strangely, not strangely, we didn't have any pushback from the staff. Mm-hmm. Everybody was really up for this and was very motivated to make it successful. As I said, we haven't had any negative comments from the clients. So I think the biggest challenges have been logistical, working out who has what time off and then tracking it and making sure that it's fair and it can be seen to be fair. When we discussed it with you initially, that was one of the bits of advice that you gave us. So that was difficult at first. We tried a few different systems to do it, and eventually we found that the HR system that we use has another kind of module, a third-party module that you can bolt on, which then tracks the rotas, our service desk manager comes up with them all at the beginning of the month, and then you can have an app on your phone for the staff, and they can be reminded, need it, reminded that they've got a day off, or more importantly, they can ask to swap it if they need to or whatever. So that was the challenges, and as well as holidays, making sure that if you book a week off, does that include the those kind of things where we struggled.
I understand. Brilliant. So you've obviously had the trial. Are you going to continue it, and what are the next steps for this initiative?
Well, the first step that we did was phase one, which was where it was the Friday afternoons. As I said, we measured it. That all went really, really successfully. So we then implemented phase two, which is where we then had a full day off every other week. So essentially, we're in phase two. It's a 9-day working fortnight. We've got the same metrics. We're continuing to measure them. When this trial period ends, we'll review the figures again to see if we've continued to see an improvement. The next logical step, which I hope we can do, is to go to a 4-day working week. I've got to be completely honest, I don't quite know how we'll make that work. Mm-hmm. As I said, we've got to be here to answer the calls for our clients during our working hours, and we've got to have enough staff to deal with any potential tickets. So there's a balance there that we've got to do. We may end up, we've always avoided this in the past, but we may end up having to work slightly longer days on those 4 days that you are working, or make the lunch hour a bit shorter.
Right.
As I said, up to now, we've avoided it because that to me doesn't quite fit with the work-life balance, having to work more. But it might be the only way that we can get to a 4-day working week. We're not quite sure. What we will do, though, is we will work with the staff to try and find the best way, and the way that everybody is the most comfortable with, to try to get there.
Fantastic. Certainly of our 100+ clients, we've talked to a number of them about this, but you're the first client that's actually taken the plunge. So really interested to hear any recommendations for people that might be listening who might want to consider this for their own organisations.
Yeah, okay. I think for us, a huge benefit was talking with you early. So I would recommend that people speak to an HR expert to find out how best to implement it in their business. And in fact, I'll just turn the tables on you and say to you, what should people think about?
Well, that's a good question. I guess like all organisational changes, one of the keys is to communicate effectively and consult with staff. So I know we talked about that right at the outset, but that is the key to getting this sort of thing right. Also, it could be a contractual change, so very important that what's actually agreed is documented with staff. So that could be, set it out what you're planning to do, lots of Q&As, and ultimately confirm if it's a permanent change to their contracts. Make sure that is confirmed. Also, I think there's a risk of sort of eroding flexibility for the employer. So we very much suggested introducing this on a trial basis. And so the impact on ProDrive was evaluated very carefully, and then moving to an extended trial, and then finally, a permanent change. So that's very, very key. Also, back to that theme of flexibility, great to have for employees, but also need to explain to them potentially that maybe because of operational requirements, they may need to work in exceptional circumstances on the Friday, and clarify that they're not going to get overtime or anything for that because of this huge benefit that they're getting.
Yeah.
And also, I know we've touched on it, but clarify what's happening over holiday entitlement. That when you were working, if you take a half day's holiday on the Friday, if you take a day's holiday on a Friday, then you're only going to take a half day's holiday effectively, because that's all your schedule to work.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was really, I think, out of all of those, for us, the biggest help was the trial, to pitch it as a trial. That meant that if we came up with problems, the staff were very amenable, and they understood that we didn't necessarily have all the answers straight away, and they were on board with helping us find the best solution. So that was a massive difference. One thing we struggled with was part-time.
Yeah.
So how should the company approach part-time work?
I think we struggled with part-time in the office as well when we were considering this, but I mean, the example here was that full-time staff had their working day reduced by half a day per fortnight. So that equated to a 5% increase effectively in pay. And we obviously appreciated that your part-time staff typically didn't work Fridays. So the approach we suggested was to give them an increase in their holiday entitlement by 5% to make it equitable. So hypothetically, part-time employee working on only Fridays would be disproportionately benefited by this. So we thought that was the equitable approach, which I think has worked. But we may need to do something slightly different if you're going to extend.
Well, we did exactly. You're right. That is how we started it. And then when we went to the phase 2, which was the full day, we kind of realised that would be too much holiday. And they'd not be working all that much, so we then increased their salary. I think we had a chat about it, and we decided that was the way to go. And again, coming back to the trial thing, that was a really easy conversation because we pitched it as a trial, because it was something that we were all working together. That they realised that, and they realised that there was a change in the way it was structured. So there was no difficult conversations there. It was all very good.
Excellent,
brilliant. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. I think we've covered a lot here. Probably sensible to move to the chat and see if there are any questions out there.
Yeah.
We've got one, I think, from Tim Masters. Hello, Tim. So Tim says, I'm sorry, I'm unclear. Did you drop hours 20%, or do people work four longer days to make up the hours? So I suppose it's worth clarifying that we are not talking here about sort of what's typically called compressed hours, where you perhaps take one day off every fortnight by working longer hours. So that's not the case here. Effectively, I guess people are going to be working harder and smarter.
That's the idea. Yeah. That was the hope. Yeah.
The hope during their 9.5 days initially. First during their 9.5 days, and latterly 9 days over 2 weeks, and then they got their half day off on the Friday or day as essentially as included in their pay. So as we said, that equates to a 5% pay rise for the half day. And I'm looking at you for maths. And 10% pay rise effectively for the full day.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And we did consider it that the compressed hours. But as I said, to us, one of the main reasons was the work-life balance, and it didn't quite fit with that. So we did choose that. But I know that is where. I know that is the way that a lot of companies are doing it, and some of the ones that we spoke to initially, that's how they were dealing with it.
Yeah, that's great. I know that maybe many of the employers out there will be thinking, well, that's lovely, but I wish I could reduce my working hours. So have you practiced what you preached and extended this to the managers and directors within the business?
Yes, we have. Yes, very much. And I believe in leadership teams modelling the behaviour that they expect of their staff. So I can say that out of the 3 directors, 2 of us are doing it fairly regularly. One of us isn't doing it, unfortunately. The 2 that are, we both have young families, so I think that has a big impact on it. But yeah, I recognise that we wanted to be seen to be following it as well, so we've tried to do that.
Very good. So you're leading by example.
Trying to, yeah.
Trying to. Very good. There's a question from Chris Ward. How do you fit 5 pints? This was probably my question right at the outset. How do you fit 5 pints into a 5-pint jug? Does this mean that we aren't good at being productive in the first place? And if so, what stops us from settling into a non-productive 4-day week once the enthusiasm has worn off?
It's a good question.
Good question.
It's a great question. I think for us, yes, there was an element of not being productive enough, and we could improve on that. And we did see the improvements. We did look at all the meetings that we were doing, and we did shorten a lot of them and make them more efficient. And we challenged the staff to be more productive and to be more efficient. We gave them, if you like, this and said, we want to do this, but we do need to see the productivity figures increase. So you used the term earlier, we need you to work smarter, and we need to be more productive. And it did happen. All the reports say that it will, and it did. As for what's going to happen long term, as to whether people slip back into their old sort of productivity ways, I think that there's a very real chance of that. We have the baseline figures,
Yeah.
so we know where we are, and if we start to see it drop, we can address that and we can look at it. But yeah, of course, that's a problem. I guess once people get used to things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Another question that lots of people have said to me is, well, this is just going to mean that in 2 years everyone's going to want a 3-day working week. Which I can kind of see, although I think it's an interesting way to look at human activity. But we've worked a 5-day working week for who knows how long in England, probably since, I don't know, the Industrial Revolution or something. It's taken us this long to get to saying we want a 4-day working week. So eventually I think that conversation will happen, but I don't imagine it will happen while I'm still working.
Yeah. Thank you. I think you answered a very difficult question very well. So from Lindsay Dean, did you implement one solution for all as opposed to reducing the hours and allowing flexibility on how when individuals chose to work?
It depends on the department that we were looking at. So as I said, the service desk, we have to be here 7:30 to 6:30. So we couldn't have that much flexibility within the service desk. What we call the projects team, who are the people that design and implement new systems, that's less difficult to work flexibly because they're not on call. They don't have to be available to answer the phone. And then obviously the other people that we have in sales and accounting and marketing. So there was flexibility in some of the departments, but not in the service desk. Again, that was very clear. People in the service desk know that that's always required and that's part of the job.
Excellent. We have a question from Bruce. Were there any specific measures you had to take to keep productivity levels the same with fewer hours? Good question, Bruce.
Yeah, I think that's similar to Chris Ward's question, isn't it? Yes. We reduced meetings. We made sure that we were more efficient in the meetings that we did have, challenged the staff, as I said, to do it. And it was a great carrot. I mean, everybody wanted to do this. Everybody was very keen for us to move to phase 2 and very keen for us to move to phase 3. So everyone's motivated to be productive. The figures that we look at are part of our normal KPIs anyway, and they get reported on weekly. So everybody knows kind of where they are each week and how it's moving along.
Fantastic. Do you recommend only doing this if the whole company can do it? How do you recommend managing different departments? I think flexibility in this rollout. I think you covered some of that.
Yeah, I think it would be very, very difficult. I would struggle if I was implementing it in my business where it wasn't fair to everybody. One of our company values is about fairness and balance. So I think it would be a hard sell to do if it was only for certain departments.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible, there's no doubt, but for me, it wouldn't sit quite right.
Yeah. And quite a provocative question from Chris Ward. Is there something fundamentally wrong with work if people just want to do less and less of it? Is this a band-aid fix to an underlying problem? I'll chip in. Do you want to?
This is way above my pay grade. You're going for it, Albert.
That's quite a philosophical question, Chris. I think we can only deal with the working environment, and clearly, the logical conclusion of this will probably be that no one works at all and gets full pay. Gets full pay, and maybe when robots take over the world, that's the way it's going to be. But from ProDrive's perspective, it's great for morale, motivation, recruitment and retention. So it's working.
Yeah.
I think at that macro level, that's probably all we're qualified to talk about.
Really. It does tick a lot of boxes. Yeah. I mean, I get where the question's coming from, absolutely, and we do a lot to try and engage our staff outside of this initiative, and there's all sorts of thoughts on ownership of tasks and rewards and how to keep people motivated. And I think if you can have people doing a job that they love and they're supported and they feel rewarded and recognised for what you're doing, then they will want to do a great job and they will want to work. But probably most people would choose to be with their family than at work at the end of the day, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you, Albert.
I think probably just worth saying we're recording this. This will be available, and if you want to share it with people, your clients or colleagues that might be interested, then please feel free to do so.
Yeah, and
So-
thank you very much for the questions as well. It's really
Absolutely,
good
yeah,
ones there.
excellent questions. And thank you very much for joining us.